Henry! Coming, mother! Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Pixeled Moment. And this week, you're joining Henry and I just named him Henry on the spur of the moment right now. Talking about Alien and that series. Well, I'll try to keep it just to the first four, which the real series. No, I know that's up for debate, but now looking back, because I watched the first four movies last week, and just for kicks, I went ahead and watched Prometheus and Alien Covenant. I'll get to that a little bit. But yeah, looking back on Alien, it's, in my mind, one of the perfect movies. The horror, thriller, sci-fi genre, what have you. It had everything. The build up for the first 45 minutes, some people thought that was too slow. I accepted it for what it was, because when I first saw it, I think I was 10 years old. I saw Aliens first, and then I got to see Alien. Because as far as my folks were concerned, hey, action, violence, that's okay. But, bad language and sex, oh no, we can't have that. So anyway, yeah, Alien had a big influence on how I see things through the lens, and it made me really love shadows and darkness and the idea of the bad guy or the monster maybe there in the frame and you just can't see it. I thought that was actually pretty terrifying of an idea, and I loved it. So we know the basic summary of the story. The crew of the Nostromo, like truckers in space, wake up to what they think is a distress beacon, which is actually a warning. Go investigate a derelict spacecraft on an old planet, find eggs. As other reviewers have said, it starts out, there's not really one main character, although some people may think it is Captain Dallas, Tom Skerritt's character. About halfway through the movie, start to think, oh, okay, this Sigourney Weaver, who plays Ripley, she was kind of just there and just following orders for a while, and then, okay, once Dallas is taken, boom, she steps up like, okay, she's gonna be the one who lives in the end. As this was kind of a thing in horror movies, as long as you follow the rules, you will survive. Even when I was young, I liked that it took its time. It built the suspense for me, and I kept wondering, was something going to pop out and give us a jump scare? Which personally, I don't find that that's what makes a horror movie, a bunch of jump scares, because there's just too much of that in horror movies nowadays. It's like, that's not genuinely scary. If you want something scary, it can be an idea or a visual that lasts in your head for a while. And that's the scary part. A jump scare just startles you. So I don't find that to be the definition of scary. Anyway, I love that the film took its time in the beginning, the setup. You got to really just enjoy the slow camera pans around the ship, and I was just fascinated by everything that was either in light or in shadow on all three decks and all the rooms. I was like, okay, this is how you can get good effective lighting depending on where you place it. Admiring every time I watched it, just admiring the technical details of the craft and the alien planet, and just really appreciating all the technical work that went into it, including the space jockey, all the eggs. It was pretty cool to find out that laser was for one of the popular rock bands' light shows. Now, also, as a kid, I didn't really understand and have the full appreciation of the concept of the face hugger and the psychosexual connotations that many elements in the film had. The facehugger pretty much face raping John Hurt, and then later on the full-grown alien essentially doing the same thing. And then, as an adult, learning that, okay, the concept of that was quite disturbing to a lot of men, this sexual violence. And I thought, okay, for other things that have happened throughout history, and now this film and this concept disturbs you, good. And then seeing a female hero finally, which was apparently just a rare thing at the time. Like, good on Ridley Scott and everyone involved for making that decision. Trying to keep a lot of other trivia details aside because, you can go on IMDb and learn so many things about the films. I recently just watched the Mother Mode and watched all the production notes scroll by as the film went on. And there were a couple things I never even found out watching the documentaries and the making of the behind the scenes stuff, which I would highly encourage you, if you haven't seen any of those, go invest in the DVD or Blu-ray set. Just watch all the behind the scenes stuff you can of that series, of any series, because that's what I really love about filmmaking and learning things about films. I love watching the behind the scenes stuff. And finding out, as Ronald Shusett said, that Brandywine Productions, David Giler, Walter Hill, had taken the script that Dan O'Bannon wrote and weren't exactly making it better. Although I think it was easier to accept the names that they came up with, like Dallas, Ripley, all that, instead of some of the original names. And that's okay, but the fact that they included an android, and to make the android, part of the bad guy, so to speak, corporation, I was like, okay, that's cool to accept. But I didn't know about that when I was younger. I just saw it as, okay, this guy turns out to be a robot and he's the bad guy, which is okay, it moves the story along for what it is. And the shots of Ripley going down the hall after everyone else has died, and you're always trying to see in any shot before someone dies, like, okay, how much detail of the alien can I see? And how many frames? I tried rewinding the tapes when I rented them just to watch the scenes over and over again. And it wasn't until years later we see more of the deleted frames in the scene, like the alien crawling up to Lambert. I see why they trimmed that down, but still kind of cool. And Ripley going down the corridor with the strobe light off to the side, that was a little hard to watch because I kind of had an effect to strobes, and it was like, oh, it was kind of hard to watch that. It wasn't so much hard to watch the chest burster scene, although that was effective and has obviously stood the test of time because it changed things in film. And I thought, okay, I guess a body would do that. The nervous system right after it just died so shockingly. It was also pretty cool what I think it did for Harry Dean Stanton's career. It had to have given it a huge boost, which is Ridley Scott giving him those close-ups, like an entire 5 to 10 minute scene of him searching for Jones the damn cat. I mean, we all love Jonesy. And just looking up at the condensation of part of the ship, wondering, okay, is the alien right above him there? And I know in the director's cut in 2003, they added the shot back in of it hanging there. By the time I saw that, I was already 18 at the time, and I had already seen Alien many, many times. It was cool to see it again when they brought it back to the theater. But watching that one shot, I thought, okay, we're not supposed to see the monster throughout much of the film, and now, even though it's curled up, we just saw a full body shot of it hanging there. So seeing that shot in the director's cut kind of makes me think, ooh, if this is the first time anyone sees Alien, I wouldn't recommend that cut, because all of a sudden you've revealed the whole monster. Even though it's still in the shadows and curled up and all that, it's like, it's all right there. And seeing Yaphet Kotto just beat Ian Holmes' head, Ash's head, and finding out that he's an android, it's kind of a shocking reveal. But, I was a kid. I was just fascinated by anything in all three of the first movies. And Ian Holmes just gave that great little speech about it being unclouded by remorse or delusions of morality, right before being torched. But he and everybody else in that film are just fantastic actors and good character actors. I think that helped sell it because, as Ridley Scott said, you didn't really know who the actors were as far as big names go, but you knew that they were really good character actors. And you saw the characters as you were supposed to. And the cocooning scene, I definitely get why that was cut, because it did slow the pace down. If Ripley's trying to escape the ship in a certain matter of minutes, and then to go down and find, Dallas and Brett being turned into eggs, which was sad and horrifying at the same time. But also, it's like, okay, we're kind of slowing it down. But if I had seen that when I was a kid, if it was included, I still would have been fascinated by it. But having gotten older and understanding pacing, yeah, okay. And at the end, I was amazed at how they were able to fit Balaji Badeo in that tiny little corner when he's terrifying Ripley. That's really effective, even though I was kind of affected by strobe light as a kid. I'm like, okay, this imagery and this, concept of visual art, this is effective, and that is scary. You're trapped in a room with a monster and you can't get out of it. But then when she, fired it with a tiny little harpoon gun and you see it, you can tell it's a stunt man flying backwards. It's like, oh, okay, now we see the whole thing, and it's kind of bulky. It doesn't look thin and elegant. It's like, you can tell it's bulky, but it's, you work with what you got and the budget you got on making a film. It is what it is. So we believed it for 2 hours of the film. For the next 5 minutes, just like Jaws blowing the shark up at the end, for the next 30 seconds, you can believe it. It's okay. And just a nice ending with Howard Hanson's, the Symphony No. 2, I think it was. Kind of a shame that Jerry Goldsmith's score that he wrote for the film, some of it was used, some of it wasn't. Some of it they used for a film called Freud that he did music for as well. And I kind of get it, because listening to the soundtrack, maybe it depends on what you hear first, but I kind of accepted the other tracks that they put in place of what he wrote, because it felt a little more tense. Now, Aliens, which was the first one I saw, and I accepted that for what it was and was fascinated by it. It's like, okay, that's more action and terror rather than horror thriller, as Ridley Scott made, essentially, as he said, the 2001 meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm like, yep, that's what it was. And so when I first saw Aliens, it's like, okay, there's a good slow build-up of suspense and tension here, and then we get right into the action, but we also build up and sort of get to know characters, and you could, even as a kid, I could kind of tell, like, okay, this person's getting more close-ups and screen time and a few more lines, like they're probably going to survive longer. But being fascinated by the details of the world and how you can destroy an interior, build it up, make it look nice, and then destroy it. And then later on we saw the deleted scenes, like, okay, this helps set up the colony a bit more, and I liked it, but I understand why they cut it for time. Seeing elements that at first I thought were kind of repeating a lot of what we already saw in Alien, like Ripley going down the corridors, her confronting Burke, which is like her confronting Ash. It's like, okay, a lot of the imagery is pretty similar, even though I know James Cameron didn't want to repeat what Ridley Scott did, but to me it sort of helped keep the same structure of this, suspense and tension building up, having similarities from the first film carried over to the second. And we'll say James Cameron knew how to write some one-liners, especially for Bill Paxton. He just delivered them beautifully. As I said, Aliens was kind of a roller coaster, because you got the suspense, slow tension, then you got an action scene, and then it goes back to dialogue and slow tension. You got the face huggers, and it immediately goes right back into another action sequence with all the aliens in the room coming down from the ceilings. And it doesn't really let up after that, which we were kind of hoping to see Burke get killed. But, bless Paul Reiser, he did such a great job of playing a slime ball. But then I don't know which I thought was cooler towards the end, when Ripley gets Newt and all of a sudden they run into the egg room accidentally, and it's just the music is just a very low rumble, almost completely silent, which was very effective for me as a kid. That stuck with me, not so much as terror, even though that was there, but fascination on how silence can work in a film. And a scene like that was like, okay, music's not gonna help anything, it's just a oh shit moment. And then slowly looking up at the Queen, and that was a money shot in itself. And then later on looking at how they constructed, the Queen moving and all that, I was like, man, this is complex, this is so cool. And then once it came down and impaled Bishop and tore him in half on the ship, it's like, oh, cool. And this is me just looking at it as a kid. It's like, oh, everything about this is so cool. That's the payoff scene at the end, the Queen versus the power loader. It's like, that's what we were waiting for. And so after all that rush, like, okay, cool. We have a happy ending. Kind of what some would call the ultimate chick flick. It's like, all right, Sigourney Weaver being a badass and saving the little girl and sort of becoming a family. And a lot of people put Hicks in with that, them becoming a family and going on. I'm like, I guess. But then we got to the opening of Alien 3, which I think I saw the TV version before I got to go rent the movie. But again, another example, I accepted it for what it was. I was okay with it not being an even bigger epic action movie than the second one. It's like, okay, now we're getting back to the fact, in the beginning we see, okay, Hicks and Newt are dead. And that told me that, okay, yeah, this is a very unforgiving universe. It's not happy. It's like Ridley Scott said for Aliens, we had the coolness of Star Wars in space, like all this, and then Alien comes along and he described it as, it's a used universe, hence of why he described the crew as truckers in space, and the ship looked kind of used. It didn't need to be clean. And I loved that about the three movies. Not everything has to be clean like you see nowadays in every science fiction film or every Chris Nolan film. But I think that was a good move from Fincher to set the tone. Ripley has nothing left. But the beginning of Alien 3, I'm torn between. I liked that the guys had the Rottweiler in the theatrical version looking in the escape pod. I kind of preferred that a little more over them bringing the oxen in the assembly cut. Years ago when I got the DVD, I took a screenshot of that with Charles Dance is just walking along the beach and all those mechanical structures in the background of them. And I found out later on they were matte paintings. I was like, this is so good. And I just took a screenshot of it, saved it as a desktop background. I was like, I really like matte paintings. There was also debate which is the better burster scene. The ox scene from the assembly cut later on, the special edition, or the dog scene. I showed it to a couple of friends who hadn't seen Alien 3 before, and they were like, oh no, the poor dog. I'm like, yeah, the poor dog, poor everything. This is not a happy film. That scene also kind of stuck with me, cutting back and forth between the bursting happening and Dylan, Charles S. Dutton giving that really nice speech. He got some really good dialogue in this film, and he's just a great speaker, because I saw him in Rudy. But cutting back and forth was a nice bit of kind of a religious tone. And I loved watching it again and again on the VHS, picking up religious tones throughout the film, like the cross at sunset, finding out later that it was supposed to be set with Vincent Ward's script set on a wooden planet. But I still thought that was cool. The prisoners had taken on religion, and I think that's what helped Alien 3 last the test of time for me. The fascination with, okay, the alien is now being compared with, the devil and other religious analogies. I thought, that's pretty cool. But we're still getting back to the shadows, the monster creeping in the dark that you can't quite see. And I think, Fincher captured that very well. Unfortunately, I didn't know who David Fincher was when I first saw this. But the more I watched it, the more I could tell, there are problems. I'm not sure why this dialogue is contradicting that dialogue. And finding out from watching the documentaries that, oh, right, he was shooting without a finished script. So, of course, things are changing. Like, Dylan and his crew all of a sudden saying, okay, Ripley is the officer, she should be the leader. And then in a later scene saying, why should we put our asses on the line for you? Like, you kind of just... And just as we were sort of getting to know the Gallic character, all of a sudden he disappears. Last we see him, he's just in a bed. After Charles Dance, amazing actor, gets killed halfway through the film. It gets even more bleak and depressing, not just for Ripley, but kind of for us. The only thing really holding me into it was almost anything Charles said, because he said it with such conviction. And not to say that all the other guys weren't great, because they were all like classically trained actors. As someone said, they could have put on a Shakespearean play in that set instead of doing Alien 3, and I think we would have still been fascinated by watching it. But seeing, when we just kind of left him there, I thought, okay, maybe he just got killed off screen. And later on, seeing the special edition assembly cut where Gallic goes to free the alien because he thinks it's some kind of god, and seeing him die like that makes a little more sense why things happen the way they did. Seeing Junior sacrifice himself to sort of trap the alien in there, which made more sense for the special edition. And it was so sad. It's like, that was kind of heartbreaking. Somebody actually does something good. One of these prisoners is actually doing something heroic. Like, wow, I guess they're not all bad guys. I think that helped you sympathize a little more with the prisoners. Even though, as Lance Henriksen said in the documentary, it's like, these aren't good people, and now Ripley is fraternizing with him. It's like, who are you supposed to root for? Which, I get it. I do get where he's coming from, but, this isn't exactly a black and white universe. Not everyone is absolutely good or absolutely bad. Everything's a gray area. And then the tunnel chase, it's like, oh, at first I was like, but I want to see more of this character, even though I didn't get to see more of this prisoner in the film. I was like, I'm kind of getting interested in just seeing their face on screen, their expressions, and how they reacted to things. Like, it's interesting. But then the tunnel chase scene, it's like, that was pretty cool to see the camera, the perspective of the alien all of a sudden turn around to the ceiling and move like that. I was like, oh, how did they do that? Learning the type of camera setup and the rig that the guy was running with. Like, oh, that's cool. I want to do that. And showing that Dylan was the toughest of them all, the way he went out just holding the alien down, letting it kill him, and just, fighting. Even when I was young, I always worried about the lead that got poured. Like, ooh, what if the fumes are getting on Ripley? Is she going to die from the fumes? Or what if a little bit gets on her? I kind of worried about that before I knew, okay, here's what the lead actually is. Like, okay, safety precautions in Hollywood. And the ambiguity, not really knowing if the bishop, that Lance Henriksen's character that came back, was actually human or if he was a droid. I can't remember if that was ever finalized or settled. I kind of like that it was sort of left open. Just enough to make you curious. I'm not saying I disagree with people who hated Alien 3, or at least hated it at the time. I get that it's not happy, it's bleak, it's depressing. What I saw was I was just curious to know what each film was about. And once, okay, we established the tone, Alien 3 is not happy, I was like, okay, but what's going to happen? That was my question. I think I was one of the rare exceptions at the time, even as a kid. Like, yeah, I liked Alien 3. You get to see a new type of alien, especially after Aliens came out, and I had these little action figures, this little praying mantis alien and a sort of crab alien and a gorilla alien. You could put water in it and squirt it out. I was just curious to see what new kind of breed they'd come up with, which was still cool. I think set in the right lighting and the darkness, I think any of those hybrids could be cool to see in a future Alien film. Alien Resurrection, came out in 1997. I was 13, or I was about to turn 13, so I didn't have as much of that childlike wonder and fascination with everything. But when I remember when I first saw Alien Resurrection, I thought, okay, cool, we've done the slow horror and the action and the slow horror again. Now we got some action again. Cool. We see some Marines in the beginning. Gonna be a lot more guns and shooting because Alien 3 they didn't have guns. I know people thought that was kind of stupid to have a prison colony without guns, but it's like those prisoners could have overpowered and taken the guns, or that they could have killed the alien very easily with a gun, and then you wouldn't have as much of a movie. The Alien Resurrection is like, oh cool, it's got Winona Ryder. I loved her in Beetlejuice. And we got an underwater sequence. Seeing that for the first time, I was like, okay, that's new, that's cool. Even if the aliens were kind of CG, I thought CG was kind of cool and fascinating at the time. And I still think they did a good job with the CG aliens and then the underwater sequence. What I didn't get, one, I remember seeing Joss Whedon's name pop up, and so I kind of blamed him for a long time of everything I saw in the film. Like, this is too comedic for an alien film. There's too many funny moments. I was like, there's nothing scary about this. Like, okay, it's action, but I'm not scared or all that interested in the characters who kind of have these just goofy one-liners. No offense to Ron Perlman. It was cool to see the new concepts, like Ripley falling through the hatch and being sucked into this orgy of an alien lair now that she was sort of half alien, I guess. But from the beginning of the film, it's like she's kind of like a newborn. She doesn't know what anything is, but then 5 seconds later in the same conversation, she's talking like an experienced adult who knows everything that's going on and that's going to happen. Like, that was kind of an inconsistency for me. If somebody else can explain it better, I would appreciate it. But yeah, the more I watched Alien Resurrection, it's like, I don't have as much to comment on, because there were actors I knew and had seen before. Dan Hedaya, loved him in the Addams Family. It just seemed like it was trying too hard to be sort of a comic book movie. But the concepts and artistic directions, the saturation and the contrast in the colors, it's like, okay, it's not my thing. It seems kind of overly done, but that was the artistic vision. I respect that. Jean-Pierre has made great films, not denying that. This one, I remember him saying he didn't want to make an alien picture, and he said that's exactly what the studio wanted to hear. It's like the studio has become the biggest problem, is not only for Alien Resurrection, but especially during Alien 3. I think we can all agree they really screwed Fincher over. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Not good. It's like, why are you going to bother hiring a director to bring new, fresh ideas to a series if you're just going to change your mind 5 minutes later and say, oh no, we want this done, we want that done, this has to be this, you can't have the money to do anything that you want, but we want the movie to make a lot of money. So Resurrection was what it was. The more I watched it, the more I felt, okay, it's not as good as the first three. So I don't really watch it as much every year. Maybe once every 3 years. Maybe then I'll have it on kind of in the background. Maybe. At least with the commentary. Having the commentary tracks or the production notes that fly by. I just like listening to that. Because I love learning little details about the filmmaking process. Other than that, yeah. I really loved the first 3 Alien films. I thought those were the great ones. I'm not even going to get into Alien versus Predator. Those were... But the little shorts that Fox released online for the 40th anniversary, the little shorts that these young up-and-coming independent filmmakers got to make with the tiny little budgets, those were really good. Some were better than others, but the ideas and the concepts and what fresh filmmakers can do is like, I think we could use some more of these little shorts and explore other avenues of the universe. So yeah, I would encourage people, pop in the first 3 movies. Just, give it a watch. You appreciate the third one, more and more as you watch it. It's kind of a slow burn, and that's okay. If you want to discuss any of your favorite moments from the series, leave a comment below. If you could, hit the like button, maybe the little subscribe. Greatly appreciate it. So until we meet again, be excellent, and we'll see y'all in the next one. Oh, he just wants a hug.